Welcome to the Real Estate Way to Wealth and Freedom podcast with Jacob Ayers, providing actionable content to help you along your journey to financial freedom through real estate investing. As the premier asset class, real estate has helped ordinary people just like you amass fortunes. The benefits of passive income from real estate investing will allow you to live a life you want. And now your host, entrepreneur, real estate investor, and apartment deal syndicator, Jacob Ayers.
Hi, and welcome to the Real Estate Way to Wealth and Freedom podcast, episode 166. Hi, I'm your host, Jacob Ayers. Thanks so much for tuning in to this week's episode. Well, this week, our guest is Juan Vargas. I've known of Juan for quite some time now, as he and I are both in Houston, Texas, and he is also the host of the Commit to Wealth podcast. Well, Juan is a father, husband, real estate investor, and full-time entrepreneur, and all around a great guy. Today, you're going to find Juan's journey from BMW mechanic to multifamily syndicator, a fascinating one. He's got tons of great advice for us, and he's just a really fun time to talk to. So without further ado, let's jump into this week's episode. All right, today I welcome on the show Mr. Juan Vargas. Juan, hey, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, Jacob, it's an honor to be on your show. I appreciate it, and let's make this happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Juan, for the audience members out there that don't realize, you and I are actually both in the same market here down in Houston, Texas, and it's been fun to connect with you on this podcast, so excited to have you on. For the audience members that don't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, kind of your story, and your journey into the world of real estate investing.
So for me, my background has nothing to do with real estate. Honestly, it's like a lot of people out there. For me, my background is actually in the automotive space. And so I was a technician, I guess mechanic for those of the guys that don't know. So I was a BMW technician, the car BMW, and I did that for 14 years. The reason why I got into that space was because growing up, my dad, he actually had real estate. Well, that's another little story, but he actually had real estate growing up, and he always told me to work hard. This is how men work. You got to work hard with your hands and, those kind of things. So I learned to work hard with my hands. And I learned to, I was welding at the age of 11 and building trailers at the age of 12 and doing all those kind of things. So that was my background. I grew up in the country, and that's kind of what I did. And so my mom, she did not work. My dad was the only one that worked, and we had a big family. I have 5 siblings. And so for me, it was graduating high school. I decided to skip going to college and instead go to work. And the reason for that was because I wanted to help out my parents, help out my parents and my siblings. And shortly after that, that's when I was like, okay, I need to do something with my life. I need to, go to college or do something. And that's when the idea of going to a technical school was born. I was like, you know what? I like cars. I'm good with my hands. Let's make this happen. It's short. It is quick. And, I'll be making money right away. So that was the BMW path that I took. After so many years of working there, or during the years I was working there, I started realizing that, hey, I can't do this forever. It's one of those jobs where you have a ceiling, and it's a very low ceiling. My head was hitting the ceiling like all the time. There's no escape. So I found myself working. It's supposed to be like a 9-to-5 job. And I found myself working, from leaving the house at 6 o'clock in the morning, 6:30, and getting home 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. I have 3 boys. And so I wanted to find something else to be able to spend more time with them. And that's when the idea of real estate was born, because I was looking for ways to create passive income. And real estate was the one natural thing that kept popping up everywhere. And I was like, you know what? Let me look into real estate. And so that's the idea. That's when it was born. For me, my dad, he had real estate, growing up, and he still does. He has several homes and, several little side businesses that he does. But growing up, I didn't like real estate, and the reason for that was because my dad was doing everything himself. He was the owner. He was the landlord. He was the leasing agent. He was the handyman, everything, all the above. And so, when I was with him, we always had to go out there to the houses, and here we are spending all day, doing this, doing that, fixing this, fixing that. For me, it was a bad taste. It wasn't until I started to educate myself during my BMW years, I started to educate myself in such as a podcast like this one that we're on, the good podcast, and networking and reading books. And I started realizing that the way my dad was doing it, he was doing it wrong in my opinion, because, he was spending time there. He was doing it all. And the beauty of real estate is that it's a team sport. You can really use a bunch of people to their strengths and make it happen. And so I found out that he was doing it wrong, and I still haven't told him that, but he was doing it wrong. I decided to do it differently and create a team and use their strengths to our advantage.
Yeah, sure. I love that. Well, first off, Juan, you're giving me a little bit of flashback talking about your dad forcing you into manual labor, because I grew up the exact same way, having to spend your nights and weekends and all the extra time working for or with your dad. So yeah, I totally get that right off the bat. So, and I think another something to pull out just out of your intro really quickly there is you went to school. Well, first off, right out of high school, you got a job so you could start earning some income. And you decided, hey, I need to get a better education so that I can get a good job. And that's essentially what everyone is doing or should be doing when they go to college, is going to school to get a good education so you can get a job. There's like an ROI that you should be evaluating when you're going to school. But not everybody exactly does that. You know, some of these people going into art history or Egyptian hieroglyphic underwater basket weaving or whatever it is, like, what are you going to do with that, right?
Yeah, what are you going to do with that? Yeah.
You took a more pragmatic approach, went to trade school and got a good job, but then you kind of realized there is a ceiling. There's only so far you can go with that. And there's some limits and you kind of don't have all this control like you wanted. So here you are, you decide, hey, I'm going to do something a little different, something I've got more control on, something that doesn't have a ceiling, and something that will allow you the freedom to spend time with your family and be home at night. So you turned to real estate investing. And what did that look like from you from there? What was your very first real estate investment? What did it look like? How did you get into it? Just kind of walk us through that time in your life.
So at the age of 21, I bought my first, house. It's a house to live in. It wasn't an investment property or anything like that. And that was good. And this is in '07. It was in '07. Yeah. And I didn't know about real estate cycles and that they go up and down or anything like that. I just know that I wanted a house and I bought it, and I was excited because I was 21 years old and I had my first house. And luckily for us, my wife, she's a nurse. So she wanted to continue her education, but she was going to do it full time. So then we were like, hey, you know what? At this point, let's just, we're not going to be able to afford to live here and you go to school full time because we're both making income, so that's how we were able to pay the house. So we ended up selling the house. And shortly after that, we moved into an apartment. Well, next thing you know, the market crashed. We sold the house. No, I'm sorry. We bought the house in '05 and we sold it in '07. So we sold it right before the market crashed. Okay. So that happened. And, that's when I started learning about, hey, there's crashes in real estate. So in '09, I bought my second house. And from there, I started looking into more properties. But at this time, I wasn't educated. I was just, okay, let's just throw some darts out there and see what happens. For me, because, the first couple of houses, we had done it through conventional financing. And that's the same thing I was trying to do. I was trying to do that with houses, investment properties. I was just trying to get, bank and just submitting offers left and right. And I wasn't getting any of these offers accepted.
That has a ceiling in itself, right?
That has a ceiling in itself. And why? Why was that? It was because people that were educated, that knew what they were doing, they were, either paying cash or getting private lenders or getting hard money lenders or whatever. This is all single family here that we're talking about. And so it kept going like that. And, finally I was like, you know what, forget this. It's just not meant for me, whatever. But shortly after that, I had an offer accepted. And it was a property where submitted an offer. And I was like, all these offers here that I've been making. And then finally I get one accepted. Then there's got to be something wrong with this house, man. You're not going to fool me with this. I went to look at the house. And I'm like, it has foundation issues. It has this, the walls, like the exterior wall is like cracking. I'm like, that's why, man, I'm not going to be your sucker here. So I'm backed out of it. And at the end, I ended up kind of going a few years after that without taking down a house or looking at that. I was like, okay, maybe it's not meant for me. I'm just going to continue working. I'm making a good living anyway. So why just keep trying to do this? It's unnecessary. And it wasn't until I started a few years later when I had my kids and I was like, you know what? I really need to do something here. I need to do something. And yeah, so my first house was a single family house. And this was around 2014 or so. It was good. And then shortly after that, I took down a few of the houses and I did a couple of flips and it was uphill from there.
Yeah, I love it. So you get your start by buying your very first house that you're going to live in. Somehow, luckily, time that market just right, sell right before the market crashes, and then buy your second house right after the market had crashed. So you're doing a couple things right off the bat there. Mm-hmm. And then, so you buy a few more houses, you're doing some flips, and, now you're like getting your feet wet in this whole investment kind of world. Are you doing this full time now, or are you still working for BMW and still buying the houses on the side?
Yeah, so I was still working full time. I was doing this as a side thing because I wanted to get it to a certain income and feel good about, where I'm at. So I had those first few houses and it was on my last house that I acquired where it went well. It was a good house. I did some rehab and did some good stuff like that, but I was vacant. I was vacant for about a couple months. And during that time, I was like, man, I don't like this, man. I'm paying for everything, man. This sucks. Like I'm paying for my own mortgage in my house. Then I'm paying for a mortgage over here on this property. It's supposed to be an investment property, but I'm paying for, the mortgage, insurance insurance, taxes, electricity, whatever, all these things. I'm like, man, this is supposed to be helping me out. So the income that I had made, it's already wiped out. That was my thought process. I'm like, what's the point of this, man? And what's the point of, I mean, single family houses are good, you scale up. But for me at that point, my thought process and my opinion was I just made all this money, cash flowing a couple $100 a month on these properties. And then a couple months that I'm vacant, it just wiped me out right there. That's when the idea of there's got to be something else better than this. And I was thinking, and that's when I started thinking about multifamily.
Yeah. So walk us through that point, what you're thinking of and how do you kind of transition to multifamily at that point? What did that look like for you?
So at that point, when I was going through that process of being vacant on that house, I told my wife, you know what, forget this. I'm doing apartments. I'm doing multifamily. And she kind of looked at me and she's like, okay, where'd you get that idea from? And I was like, yeah, I'm doing apartments and I'm not looking back. It was tough. I'm not going to say it was easy. It's tough because it's a different investment platform, so to speak. It's different than single family. It's obviously commercial, what I was looking at. And so I had to educate myself on that, So there was podcasts. I listened to a bunch of different podcasts. It was a bunch of networking and, it was a bunch of books that I was reading. And I found myself reaching out to brokers and trying to, get that first property. The thing about it, and I tell this to many people, is at the very beginning, it can be a little tough because you don't have the experience. So the brokers will be like, hey, so what have you done? What have you done in real estate? I'm like, yeah, I've done, a couple of flips here and, done some single family homes here. And they're like, no, but what about multifamily? What about commercial? I'm like, no, I haven't done that, but I've done single family. And for them, they didn't care. They just kind of look at you and then laugh. And they would still send me properties, but these were junk properties that everybody else was passing on. Even then I started to realize that, these properties aren't making sense. I mean, again, I'm like, this doesn't make sense still, so I had to find a different approach. If I wasn't going to make traction through brokers, then what was another option that I could do? So I started thinking of different ways. And one of those ways that I did was do direct mail. And, that's how I came across my first smaller property. And it was a 32 unit.
Yeah. Awesome. So, at this point, like many people face this point, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. One is like when they're trying to buy this very first multifamily deal, they don't have enough cash to take it down themselves, which is pretty common, but they also don't have experience. So you've got no money, you've got no experience. I synonymate it to this conundrum when you're like 15, 16 years old, your first vehicle, right? So, okay, we need a vehicle. Well, you've got to have a job to get that vehicle, but you need a vehicle to get to the job. You need money to earn from the job. So it's like this like conundrum. You need one of these three things. You don't have any.
The chicken or the egg. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. So, you've got to get creative in what you're going to do from there. Right. So what exactly were your creative ways of getting started? You kind of mentioned finding a deal. So, finding it off market. Was that your kind of creative entry into the world of multifamily, or did you have some other angle you took?
For me, that was the, creative angle because I wasn't making much traction with brokers. I was like, okay, well, let me think of something that not many people are doing. Most of the people out there are reaching out to brokers, which I believe is probably the best way to get good deals. I mean, maybe not these days because they're priced way high, but that's going to be a solid way to get deals where the seller is legitimately trying to sell. That's why they have a listing. If you're doing like the direct mail, like I'm doing, you're pretty much throwing darts out there and they might respond to you. They may not be ready to sell, or they may be ready to sell like 2 years from now. You just don't know. Whereas with brokers, they have a property where owner wants to sell. Like if you get a good offer, I wanted to find something where not many people were doing. And like I said, that was direct mail. So I started to choose an area. Again, we're in Houston. So I started to look for areas around Houston where I wanted to target by zip code. And so I just started sending them letters. The way I got the list was through the county assessor's website. I just, typed in some zip codes and then I just made a note of all the properties and the size range that I wanted to target, which by the way was 50 units and below. And the reason why I say 50 units and below is because although there's opportunities out there for you to target and pick up a property through direct mail on larger properties, they're just few and far between. They're way more rare because, usually the larger properties they're more of a group purchase or more sophisticated buyers or whatever. So we were targeting more like mom and pop type owners and sellers. So that's why it's 50 units and below. But fast forward to that, the owners contacted me and they were interested in selling, and that's how things ended up happening.
So now this is kind of like where the rubber meets the road, right? So you've done all this work, put in all this sweat equity and labor and day in and day out, trying to first educating yourself, all this education you did, and then doing your direct mail campaign. And then finally somebody says, hey, Juan, yeah, sure, we'll be glad to sell to you. And you're like, oh, heck, now what? The clock starts ticking, you get under contract. And then what were your next steps? What did you do from there?
I say like before I even had it under contract, it was a little difficult to line up the financing because it was my first real experience. And in addition to that, it didn't qualify for agency debt because it was under $1 million. The loan amount was under $1 million. And typically for anybody out there listening, they don't loan. I mean, the loan amount has to be $1 million or higher, for you to get the greater financing through agency like Freddie Mac or Fannie Mae. And so I found it to be challenging. And so I went through several different banks until I got the green light from one of the banks. I got this property under contract, implemented a business plan, and it was a good little first property. It was good. And I've done more things from there. It was a good start.
And on that first deal, did you raise money from investors?
I did not raise money from investors. So this was a project where I was willing to do it on my own. I had saved up some capital from working my days at BMW. And so this was a project that I was, willing to do on my own. We ended up talking to my GC. He was the guy that had done a lot of the work on my single family side. He was like, hey man, this deal sounds good, man. Can I get in the deal too? And then I was like, okay, well, we talked about it and then we ran the numbers and it worked out for both of us. It was a reduced risk for me as well. So he ended up partnering with me on that deal and it ended up working out well because he was also the guy that did a lot of the rehab on the property, just turning the units and getting that property turned around. So it ended up being a really good partnership. Yeah, I was grateful for that.
That's awesome. That's key right there, is being able to find a partner that skills supplement yours, right? So you're the guy that is able to go out and build these systems and processes and find the deal and analyze them. And then you've got this partner who knows the construction side of the business, is able to renovate and rehab these units for probably a much better price than you would if you just had to go on the street and find some general contractor. And he's got sweat equity in the game. So that's kind of his piece that he's bringing to the table. So yeah, it sounds like a really good partnership, especially for that first deal.
Yeah, it was. It really was. And since then, we've looked at several other properties. We try to target some of the smaller ones, with him. Although I focus on larger properties now, still look at the smaller ones because the smaller ones are still good and you can provide some good returns. So anybody out there says bigger is better. Well, I believe that really is true. Don't ignore the smaller ones either. If you come across a good opportunity on a smaller one and the numbers make sense, then go for it. Don't say, oh, it's too small. It's only a 20 unit. It's only a 30 unit. I mean, if the numbers make sense, the numbers don't lie. And you're in it for the cash flow. So, jump at it and also look at bigger ones. I mean, who cares? Look at both. And that's kind of what I do. I look at the smaller ones on the side, but, my main focus now is the larger ones.
Yeah, sure. So you buy that very first 32 unit property with the partnership with your general contractor. And then from there, what was next?
Yeah. So from there, I did, like I said, I had some capital. And so I connected with a bunch of other sponsors or syndicators, and so I've invested passively on a few deals. 1,100 doors is what I'm in, passively as well. But apart from that, I am also a GP on a larger 265 unit that, we closed on that deal in July. Right now, we have a few offers out as well here in the Texas market and also in Memphis. Memphis is a good market where you're going to have a lot of appreciation, but it's more of a flat market. But if you have, again, we're in this, our motto is to be in it for cash flow, and it's a good cash flow market. I'm in a deal in that market as a passive investor and it's performing well. So that's another reason why I had confidence. And so, yeah, we submitted some offers in that market as well.
Yeah, awesome. So talking about some of the lessons you've learned from maybe that very first deal, talking to someone who's maybe trying to buy their very first multifamily or is interested in multifamily, just not sure how about going to do that. What kind of advice would you have to that type of person? Maybe some of your own personal lessons learned from doing that very first deal.
The first thing with anything out there is, if you heard this a million times, but it is very important for you to educate yourself. I would say educate yourself as much as you can, but you don't have to know everything. And I think that there's a lot of folks out there. And if you're one of them, then, it's okay. It's okay to get a little red, but you have to know everything. You have to know everything before you pull a trigger. If you remember my example with the house, I was like, okay, there's foundation issues. That's why you're trying to get me and you're not going to get me, at the end, that house was a house I could acquire for $70,000 and now they're selling for 160, 170. And so it was my fault for not pulling the trigger. So I would say for anybody out there that's looking at different properties, do what you can and educate yourself. Find people that are already doing what you want to do, follow their path, maybe bring them a deal. Again, you hear this a million times, but bring value to somebody else that's pretty much doing what you want to do. If it's somebody that's doing, single family, that's maybe not the person that you want to bring a deal to. Find somebody that's doing what you want to do and bring a deal, find value that you can add to them. But at the end of the day, it's about, like I said, taking action, educate yourself and taking action. That's what it's about. If you don't take action, then nothing's going to happen. No matter what you do, you can put all the information in your head and your brain as you want, but it's not going to do, you're going to have nothing to show for it if you don't pull the trigger. Fear is something that, people, it holds people back a lot of times, and so you got to punch fear in the face.
I love it. Yeah, that's transitions well into something I also wanted to ask you about. And that's kind of the mindset piece of this whole thing, right? It takes a special mindset to go in and acquire a big property like this. So talk about maybe your mindset and then maybe some mindset tips you've got for the listeners.
Yeah. So for me, it's just about making educated decisions. With everything, there's risk, but I think that there's more risk if you don't do anything at all. If you just sit there and you expect something to change and things to change on their own, then that's way riskier. And you're going to wake up 10 to 15 years from now and you're going to be in the same situation and you're going to wish you had taken action. For me, non-action is more risky than, taking action. What's the worst that can happen? Okay. If worst that can happen, I think that, you'll lose money. Okay. And everybody, works hard for their money. It's hard-earned money, but at the same time, it's just money. They're not coming for a head. They're not coming for your kids. As long as you're still breathing, you have a heartbeat and your kids are still with you, your family's still with you. That's, you live another day. So I think people need to kind of, get through that fact that money is important and money is hard to come by sometimes. And sometimes people work, their whole lives, just saving money. But again, you're not going to take that money with you when you die. So just the only way money's going to grow is if you put it to work. It's not going to grow if you have it sit there and you just keep it in your back pocket. You got to risk it. I always say that to everybody, as a mindset thing is be willing to risk. And, that's when the rewards, are achieved.
Yeah. And I love to say that the best hedge against risk is education. So two really big pieces you're talking about here. In order to decrease that risk, educate yourself a little bit, kind of understand some of the basics, protect your downside. And then from there, like you said, just overcome that fear, punch fear in the face, as you mentioned, and just get after it. So definitely love that.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what's the future hold for Juan Vargas? What are your goals? What are your plans? What are your reasons why?
I guess my why is, I think it's similar to everybody's or a lot of people out there is my family. I have my family and I would like to do things for church. I'm a part of a church and we volunteer every single Sunday. And so they do a lot of projects, not only here locally, but throughout the world. And so I like to be a part of that and be one of the biggest, guys that donates to those causes. That will give me a sense of pride, but also, be hands-on and help out children around the world and people around the world. From a business perspective, future goals, you have to have big goals, or if you have really big goals and you at least, get halfway, then you're successful. And so for me is personally, I would like to get to a certain point where we control over $1 billion worth of multifamily assets, 10,000 units within 15 years. That's kind of the goal. That's a big goal. And I would like to hopefully, also have my own, in-house, property management company to kind of oversee the projects. And so, just, something like a vertically integrated company where, just you have create a bigger firm. That's kind of what I'm thinking about, and we'll see what happens. Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. Well, it sounds like you're on track to achieve all those $1 billion in acquisitions under management, or assets under management, that is, in 15 years. Lofty goal. But like you said, hey, if you fall a little bit short and you land at $750 million of assets, then I think you'll still be all right. And
I think you'll still be all right. Yeah. I think you're okay. Yeah.
So still go down in the record books as a success. So yeah, definitely love that. Well, Juan, hey, it's been a lot of fun. As we're wrapping up here, we always wrap up with a lightning round. It's just a series of questions we ask every one of our guests. Are you up for it?
I'm down. Let's do it.
All right, cool. Well, the very first question in the lightning round is, what was your biggest hurdle getting started investing in real estate? And then what'd you do to overcome that?
Yeah. And I think we kind of, covered this a little bit, but, my biggest hurdle, as I talked about, it was fear of the unknown and fear that you're going to lose and fear that things are going to not go right. But the best way to overcome that, man, is by taking action. You're going to realize that fear, it keeps you back from so many different things. And once you take action, you're like, man, that wasn't even that bad. I don't know what the big deal was about. So just make it happen. Just go straight forward. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I love it. Well, Juan, do you have a personal habit that contributes to your success?
What I like to do with pretty much every day, what I like to do is read, keep my mind fresh on, different books and things like that. But we jump on weekly and bi-weekly calls with a group of people. And I think that's something that, people out there should be doing. Just you get with people that are at your level. If you're starting out, then get with other people that are starting out as well. And, just interchange, and jump on those calls and find out how you can help each other and hold each other accountable and write down some things and exchange ideas and progress and do those kind of things. So I would say that for anybody to have some kind of little like mastermind call, it doesn't have to be anything formal. Just, do those and make sure you're consistent with them. And you'll look back and you'll be like, man, we grew as a group. We grew so much because look at what we were talking about then. And now look what we're doing. I think that's something that, people can do, and it doesn't cost you anything. It just takes a little time, and, it's time well worth it.
Yeah, I love it. Absolutely. Awesome. I really like that. So, well, do you have an online resource that you find valuable in your day to day?
Yeah. So there's a platform that I use, and I just started using it. So I'm not going to, tell you that I'm an expert at this platform, but it's called Slack. It's a really good platform because, you get to interchange, information as a group, is more private. And so it's just a way to stay engaged with whatever project that you're working on or whatever project that you're doing. And so we started using that, and it's working out great. Another thing I would tell for folks out there is to join Facebook groups that do, or that are related in the specific subject that you want to do. So if you want to do multifamily, then join a multifamily group online, Facebook or wherever. Or if you want to do single family houses, and do that, or whatever it is you want to do. I think it's another good way to stay engaged with folks and pick each other's brains. I think that's really valuable.
Yeah, definitely so. Yeah, we'll link Slack in the show notes for our audience members to check out if they want. It's essentially just a communication tool where you can create groups and share work and share documents and messages. So yeah, really cool resource there. And of course, Facebook groups also very invaluable. So definitely consider those. Well, Juan, what book would you recommend to the listeners and why?
I will actually give you a few different books. I'll give you three. The first one for me, we have all heard of Robert Kiyosaki. So, I'm sure everybody or most of your audience has heard of, Rich Dad Poor Dad. But I personally although I like that book a lot, I personally like the cash flow quadrant because it kind of lays out which quadrants you should strive to be in. That's one of my favorite, I guess, foundational books. And so if you haven't read it, I highly recommend that you read that book. It'll be eye-opening. Rich Dad Poor Dad was an eye-opening book, but this one, it's a little bit more geared towards like the business side, which side you should be on, as far as taxes and all the good stuff, is concerned. So that's one of the books that I would recommend. A couple others is one is The Slight Edge. And, if you haven't read that one, I really like that one because it's something where I guess the theme of the book is to do something every single day to get to a certain point. So you're going to make progress that is not noticeable every single day. You're going to be doing things and it's not really going to be noticeable. But after you've been doing it for, 2 or 3 to 4 months, then you're like, oh, wow, that's when everything kind of piles up and then you see the progress, just take off. So it's just making those little bitty changes every single day to get to a certain point. And so read that book, man. It really is engaging. It's not one of those dull, boring books. I think it's really engaging and you'll definitely pick up some things from that book. So that's The Slight Edge. I don't remember the author. The third one is Extreme Ownership. This is a powerful book. And this is a couple, the authors are ex-Navy SEALs. So they have stories in there from their Marine days overseas. But then what I like about it is that they apply those principles to the business. And the theme of the book, I guess, is, to hold yourself accountable. Don't blame others for your actions or for your lack of actions. Hold yourself accountable in everything that you do and everything you do in business and in life and whatever. Push yourself. That's a really engaging book as well. It's called Extreme Ownership. So yeah, I'll give you more than one. So I'm sorry it took a little bit longer, but yeah, those are.
No, I like those. All really good recommendations. Well, I've not personally read The Slight Edge, but I'll have to pick it up. So first, Cash Flow Quadrant by Robert Kiyosaki. Another one of those great foundational books. Talks about, which quadrant. Well, I won't spoil it for the people who haven't read it, but definitely pick that up. You got The Slight Edge and then Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin, I believe. Those are the authors.
Yes, those are the authors, man. And I follow those guys on Instagram and I don't know if LinkedIn or whichever platform it was, just because, they're one of those guys, man. I have a lot of respect for yeah, exactly. I have a lot of respect for those guys. For anybody out there that's joined the service, whichever branch you're in, man, I have a lot of respect for you. You have definitely sacrificed a lot, both in time, family, whatever, physically. So yeah, I definitely support those guys.
Yeah, definitely so. Well, Juan, last question in the lightning round. If you were to give advice to your 20-year-old self to get started in real estate investing, what would that be?
Yeah, so this is a quote from Robert Kiyosaki. I don't know how it goes exactly, but it's a quote that goes, work to learn, not to earn. And he talks about this for folks out there. Let's say if I was 20, I would definitely do that. Knowing what I don't know now, I would definitely go back and when I was 20 and just provide value for somebody else for free. Who cares? I'll do whatever I can. I'll mow your lawn. I'll take out your trash, whatever it is I have to do just to be around you, be around your network, just learn from you. So I would say that quote, take it seriously. If you are 20 years old right now, 25, you're still young, even 30, who cares? Work to learn, not to earn. And then you'll definitely earn, once you get that knowledge. You want that knowledge.
Yeah, definitely so. Well, Juan, hey, it's been a lot of fun having you on the podcast. It's been a long time coming. I'm glad we got to connect. You've got a really interesting story and I think very valuable information you've shared with the audience members, especially to those people who are just kind of getting started. You're just a few steps ahead of them. So I think you're a really relatable kind of case study and guy to look up to. So yeah, I really appreciate you coming on the show. Now, you actually also host a real estate investing podcast. So tell us a little bit about that, what people can expect from it and where they can find more about you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. It's the podcast is called Commit to Wealth. Sometimes I guess say it right because people are like, what? Well, what is that? Wealth, WEALTH. So yeah, I have to spell it out sometimes because they're like, what do you say? So anyways, it's something similar to what you do. We focus on commercial real estate and we focus on, specifically a little bit more on multifamily. And so it's a good way to, for others to engage and, to learn as well. And the reason why I called it that is because wealth to me is family, friends, your religious beliefs, time, and money, money is part of it, but that's wealth to me. So you have to commit to it to be able to attain it, so, but yeah, people can reach out to me through that platform at juan@committowealth.com or even at juan@genwealthcapital.com.
Awesome. So they can find that podcast, Commit to Wealth, anywhere you can find podcasts, where you're listening to this one or wherever you love to listen to podcasts at. And then you've got committowealth.com as well. So
yeah, and then they can reach out to me on LinkedIn or Twitter or Instagram, one of those platforms. And Instagram and Twitter, I'm the Juan Vargas. So that's my profile ID, only because Juan Vargas was already taken, so I had to be the. So yeah, I'm happy to connect with anybody out there. So
all right. Yeah. Well, hey, Juan, thanks so much. It's been a lot of fun having you on the show. Look forward to talking with you in the future again.
Yeah, and I appreciate you having me on, and thank you so much. And I wish you a lot of success in what you do.
Thanks so much, Juan. Take care.
Yes, sir. Thanks.
All right, that wraps up this week's episode with our guest, Juan Vargas. If you'd like to connect with Juan or check out any of the resources we mentioned in the show, you can find those in the show notes or at the website at www.jacobayers.com/166. For more information, resources, and to connect with me, visit the website at www.jacobayers.com. Till next week, engineer the lifestyle you want.
You've been listening to the Real Estate Way to Wealth and Freedom podcast, providing you actionable content to build your real estate empire. Nothing on this show should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for personal advice. The opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have a potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of the Real Estate Way to Wealth and Freedom, LLC, exclusively.